be given by Dönercan Dönük from Mersin University, which is in Turkey. And from what I read of our profile, Professor Dönük has a master degree in linguistics and a PhD in English language. So the title of our talk will be a retrospective research on the place of grammar for the future of language education. So you can proceed if you want.
Thank you. Just a minute for just a minute. I think I don't have my camera on.
No, you don't have.
Just a minute, please. Excuse me for that. Okay, let's start with the speech. First of all, I'd like to have my greetings from Turkey to everybody here. As mentioned, the title of my speech is a retrospective research on the place of grammar. I'm from Mersin University, Turkey. First of all, I'd like to start with the definition of grammar, and actually it is a kind of chronological definition, and then a retrospective view of grammar from my point of view as an experience, the place of grammar in methodology, grammar yesterday, today, and maybe tomorrow, and conclusion. This is the structure of my speech. Actually, let me talk about the background for my concern for grammar. Actually, it has been my concern because I have been a practitioner for a long time, and I find it important to have a place for grammar in language teaching. So I mostly base my studies on the teaching of grammar. So I did some search, and I saw that grammar existed at a very early time, even before Christ. And Dionysius mentioned an early grammar and emphasized the connection between grammar and literature in those very early years, and identified and defined 8 parts of speech in Greek, which means that actually grammar existed a very long time ago. And I also came across, while I was doing some search, a fragment of grammar by Cobbett, who wrote a letter to his son while he was homeschooling his son. He wrote volumes of letters, and here he made a very good definition of grammar. I loved it. Grammar teaches us how to make use of words. That is to say, it teaches us how to make use of them in the proper manner. As I used to teach you how to sow and plant the beds in the garden, for you could have thrown about seeds and stuck in plants of some sort or other, in some way or other, without any teaching of mine. And so can anybody, without rules or instructions, put masses of words upon paper. But to be able to choose the words which ought to be employed and to place them where they ought to be placed, we must become acquainted with certain principles and rules. And these principles and rules constitute what is called grammar. A great definition. So, one more invitation from Hartwell in the year 1985 asks about the importance of grammar. Is the grammar issue so important? Why has it been the dominant focus of composition research for the last 75 years? The second question is, what definitions of the word grammar are needed to articulate the issue intelligibly? What do findings in cognate disciplines suggest about the value of formal grammar instruction? And what's our theory of language, and what does it predict about the value of formal instruction? As you can see, even in the early 1900s, there was the concern about grammar. 1985 here, 75 years. So in the beginning of 19th century, I should say, there was a concern, and even before that, there are definitions of grammar, and they are actually from different perspectives, but I believe that grammar existed, and the importance, the weight placed on grammar also existed. My travel trip with grammar can be said to have four phases. As a student, while I was taking my education, I was taught grammar. It was overt, direct grammar, and it was set of rules, discourse fragments, and so on. Our teacher used to let us memorize the rules or write them on the board so that we could follow. And it was actually working as a signpost for us to understand how could things happen, how we can produce very good, accurate sentences, and so on. In the second phase, as a teacher candidate, while I was at the university, grammar was with me again as the rules of grammar. And this time, our instructor used to teach us the structures so that we could have a good foundation of grammar, and then teach us how to teach grammar. And then I started the field as a practitioner. I used grammar in the forms of total physical response. Then I was a very young teacher as a novice. When I first started, the curriculum instructed me to use total physical response, for example, for 1 month without any writing on the board, just with the students' involvement, just comments, and write all the things possible in my notebook without the students seeing. We had to spend 1 month of grammar teaching in this way, just the comments and instructions, basic classroom vocabulary, and so on. This is my experience with TPR. It was successful. My students learned. And then I started with audiolingual method. There was more to that because more audiolingual materials, audios, slides, both visual and audio materials accompanying, and the course books, a lot of rich material. And in audiolingual methods, I was teaching in a private course. It was great because my students were also competent users, and I loved the way I was teaching. In the progressing years, there came CLT, communicative language teaching, more materials, more visuals, more accompanying course books, source books, story books, everything. And my experience of teaching was doubled because communicative language teaching also added the dimension of interaction and communication. As years passed by, I was able to find my way through eclecticism because I thought that it was not enough just to stick to one method. I should be using more and more. So I was able to use the portions of language teaching methodology instead of sticking to just one. And when I finished with my practitioner in the field, I started as a university instructor. And in those years, or since those years, I should say, I have been teaching my students how to teach a language, particularly grammar, because things have changed a lot. How can we say pedagogy, content, knowledge together, pedagogical content knowledge, which means you teach something, but you need the pedagogy to teach it. So since those times, I have been involved in grammar in some way. It is like the two ends of the continuum, because you have the foreign language or pedagogic grammar in your hand, because you have your students as teacher candidates. They will be teaching grammar. and you need to do it because it is either pedagogic grammar, I mean the grammar that is formally and explicitly taught, or grammatical descriptions prepared for teaching and learning purposes as pedagogic grammars, or the rules, I should say. For example, we often say, don't forget to add s for third person singular, use verb to for past tense, add the if a noun is unique or whatever. This often happened until the last 20 years, and then things have changed. Now we are at the two ends of the continuum. What does that mean? We are at the both sides. Some people teach grammar overtly, some do it covertly. So implicit or explicit teaching of grammar takes place here. The earlier methods heavily relied on direct grammar instruction. However, the methods depending on the theory of naturalistic principles propose anchoring grammar to the unconscious mind of the learners. So, grammar yesterday was different from grammar today, and tomorrow it will be even more different. Human learning has been on the agenda of the fundamental schools of thought in psychology for a long time, and related to that, approaches such as behaviorism, cognitivism, and constructivism were adopted by language teaching methodology. Whatever the approach is, I firmly believe that true human interaction depends on the rules. And as EFL or ESL teachers, we come to a crossroad. Which road to take? This way or that way? Are we going to take the teaching of grammar or letting our students pick up the language and grammar involved in that pack? This is our decision. And when we look at this question from the choice, we have two, traditional or contemporary. Most people think that grammar is a thing of the past. Yes, they are right about it, because now we have everything on the digital basis. We have all the opportunities related to learning. So why should we bother to teach or to learn grammar as its own way? However, with CLT, communicative language teaching, I think it has been a little bit misunderstood. People thought that there was no grammar in it. Actually, there was grammar, but it is somewhere that is hidden as an implicit type of grammar. The teacher is supposed to know what kind of curriculum, what kind of grammar she is or he is going to teach. So voices from the classroom, particularly on the TESOL grounds, said that there should be grammar, according to Borg. And grammar has regained its lost prestige through the efforts of practitioners. And my view is that there is always traditional for the contemporary to happen, to realize. Traditional lays the foundation for contemporary. And this traditional way of teaching grammar should be the base for the contemporary. The unchanging fact is that grammar has always existed in course books, multimedia, flashcards, task-based materials, games, dictionaries, and this is, to my observation, as the first person who has witnessed, who has observed the whole teaching system throughout the years. I have always encountered grammar, but this way or that way, implicitly or explicitly, but it has existed. It would be something that I think that would not be right to say there shouldn't be grammar in our program. Grammar should exist, but in some way we should think about the way to deliver it to our students. Nowadays, we have many ways of learning. First of all, self-directed learning, autonomous learning. Our students can learn from their own initiation. They have their own digital platforms. They have discovery learning. They can learn through discovering things, or they are exposed to a lot of digital materials provided by Web 2.0 tools, particularly materials created by artificial intelligence, are all the means for being exposed to the right grammar. However, the thing is, how are we going to regulate all these things? Is incidental learning enough, or do we need a curriculum for this to happen? One more thing that I should mention is corpus linguistics for teaching grammar. It is the relatively new thing of learning something, and corpora is an effective tool in teaching vocabulary and grammar because it provides the concept of pattern as an interface between lexis and grammar. I mean the vocabulary and grammar. When you look at the corpus, you can see there is a lot in it because you just don't see the patterns, you just don't see the rules as taking place in the dictionaries or in the grammar books, but you can also talk about things that are hidden in these two ways and the interface. It's a tool for lexicographers. Multi-million word corpora exists to examine word frequency, patterning, and semantics for the actual use rather than intuition. Through the concordance lines, it's possible to obtain the collocation forms the word collocates. It's possible to illustrate a wide range of prepositions, collocations, and idiomatic usage, as well as other instances, as suggested by O'Keefe. And my future projections for grammar is, it's a must for a true, flawless, and direct channel of conversation. If you don't want to communicate, interact like Tarzan and Jane, we should be using grammar. Otherwise, we cannot have true, real communication. Can you imagine the difference between few and very few and a few? There is a difference. Just the article, but it makes a difference. So we need to use grammar. But for this to happen, we need to use the traditional grammar ways as reshaped by the more contemporary ways. So digital learning must be reshaped for this to happen. It is a tool for us so that teaching and learning within formal schooling could be based on a curriculum. With the curriculum, things will be even smoother and better because picking up the grammar is not enough. If we are talking about formal schooling, as asked by Hartwell, we need to have this kind of grammar in our own agenda. This is all from me. Thanks for listening. It's a very diverse topic. It's not that easy to encompass it into the minutes, but if you have any questions or comments, please help yourself. I'm here.